Hi friends, it's time for another demo. I'm going to try something that a few people have requested. I have gradient palettes in my shop and I've had a few people ask if I would actually paint the gradient onto warps. So I'm going to try that out for the first time today, and I'm not quite sure how long I want to make transitions yet. I'm not quite sure if I want them to be longer or shorter, if I want to delay these out in a different pattern. But anyway, I'm going to try it out. I think it's going to be a little bit of a long transition, but I've got a 5/2 Tencel warp, an 8/2 Tencel warp, and a cotton warp, and I've got the Midnight Lagoon gradient palette mixed up into paints that I'm going to use on this yarn as opposed to dyeing individual skeins. So it's a little bit different than the gradient palette. My gradient palette for Midnight Lagoon has 3 key colors, and then it has in-between colors. So this time I've only got 5 colors mixed up, with the 3 key colors, 1, 2, and 3, and then 2 sort of intermediary between those. So we're just gonna paint it and see how it comes out. And then once this is all done, I'll evaluate the results. I should probably put gloves on. We'll evaluate the results and see what adjustments I might want to make to future warps. All right, so this is the aqua color. I'm gonna go ahead and just lay this out so we can see these colors. And let's see here, so this will be, whoop, way to go. Good thing I'm blending this all together, so you won't even notice that here in a bit, but I'm just laying out a line just so I know where approximately I'm going to be blending these colors together. So this is color number 2. So this is good to see as well because the tertiary, or the intermediary color maybe leans a little bit heavy to this color than that one, but we'll see what the final results come out like. And then this is between the blue and the purple. And then this is the purple. So this will be a little bit of a smoother transition between colors in my typical warps, where I don't usually do in-between colors. I usually just push them together to see what they do when they blend together, but in this case I actually made the in-between color and it's going to be its own section. So this is going to be a long and slow transition. I'm thinking in the future I might actually lay the yarn out in a smaller section so that the repeat isn't as long, or I might consider repeating it a little bit more across the length of this. I'm not sure yet, so let's just do this, see what happens. I'm going to start by pouring into the edges. So when I lay down yarn in this sort of accordion fold, I always make sure to pour into the fold because the fold sort of resists dye. So I lift it up and pour it down and make sure it gets all the way through. I've never painted cotton and Tencel warps at the same time because they tend to absorb colors in a different way. The cotton's it takes up the color a little bit more than the Tencel, or a little more quickly, and prevents it from spreading as quickly. So I'll just go ahead and just shove that with my hand. Kind of start to spread it out. Because this is at the fold, the yarn's a little bit longer around the fold. So I usually try to make this run of color a little bit shorter than the ones in the middle. I'll go ahead and do the purple on the outside of this side. Make sure I got all that blue off. And then I'll kind of work my way into the center. Oh, see, I spilled. I'll just let the yarn soak it all up. So taking a color that I use in an immersion bath and coming up with the how much dye to mix for painting, I haven't quite figured out yet. So I'm also curious to see if the way that I mixed up these colors, if they'll actually look the same in value as my gradient palette. I might have to make some adjustments. And it's really hard to tell in this state. There we go. Make sure it gets through there. Yeah, it's good and absorbed. Pour a little bit more. Spread it out a little bit more. Really squish it through. Make sure it's getting all the way through there. Yeah, it's doing good. I try not to squish this yarn together too much this direction so that the dye can actually get through to the bottom. That can be kind of a problem when you lay it out like this, making sure that the dye gets absorbed all the way through. All right, next color. And sometimes I'll even spread the yarn out a little bit so the dye can pool underneath it. I'm not as worried about cleaning the brayer in between these two colors because they're already a blend of each other. I might have needed to pour that a little bit closer. Yeah, so this is new to me. We're kind of figuring this out together. But you can see where that cotton just ate it up real fast. Pour a little bit more right here. Maybe even just squish it through. It's going to be really hard to tell how that's coming out until I wash it. All right, so I think we're done with this purple. Might need a little bit more of that, we'll see. Okay. Yeah, I don't want that gap. Might have to think about pouring these colors a little bit closer together. There we go. I want them to blend together so the transition is really nice and smooth. Hopefully it's smooth. I don't know until I wash it out what exactly is going on here. So you can still kind of see where I initially poured the dye in there, but it's also been sitting on the yarn longer, so it's probably starting to activate. I don't know if any of that's picked up by the camera at all. It's what I see in front of me, but it's really dark, so I'm not sure you could see any difference. But I can still see where I poured my line here, and I can see the space in between them. So hopefully that resolves itself as it sits on the yarn a little longer. So maybe I'll push this a little farther this direction. And then I'll pour this color down. This is my absolute favorite color right here. This particular blue, I'm a big fan. roughly calculated how much paint I would need for these 3 warps, and it seems to be pretty close to the right amount for how I paint, which I tend to pour a lot of dye down when I paint because I like to get it completely absorbed through the yarn as much as possible. I like dark and vibrant, but because I'm using color recipes for immersion and trying to convert them into paints, we'll see how I did. And pour a little bit more here. And finish it off with this aqua color. There's a little bit of a jump between these 2 colors, so if I rewrote this, I would probably make this intermediary color lean a little bit more green so it doesn't make such a jump, but we'll see what happens after they're blended together. Okay. Can we get through to the other side? I think we did. Kind of take a look, see. It's a little bit pale in here. It happens with the cotton sometimes. It's like the cotton grabs the pigment or grabs the dye molecules and hangs on, it sticks to them a little bit more than the Tencel. The Tencel is a little bit easier to spread out than the cotton. It's a little bit pale right there. I could pour just a little bit more right there. Yeah, it looks like it got all the way through there. Okay. We'll see. It can be really hard to see what's going on in the middle. You can kind of lift it up and look. But that looks good. So I'm going to let this sit on the yarn, and then I'm going to wash it out, and I will share the results as soon as I am ready and able to.